Rocket Recovery is a podcast and community for those who suffer from addictive, selfish sexual behavior. If you can remember anything from our time together, think on this. You are not alone. There are many of us who have suffered and have found a solution that works. We now live happy, joyous, and free lives. We know that this may feel completely unattainable for you right now, but be assured, peace and serenity can be found in this life for you too. Rocket Recovery seeks to demystify recovery. There are simple steps to take, but a hard path to follow. We'll support you with principles, maxims, mantras to sustain you on your journey. We'll introduce you to those who will guide you. And remember, you are not alone. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Rocket Recovery podcast. On this episode, number 2, we will be covering the solution to the addiction problem. Addiction 101, Part 2, the solution. Stay tuned. Hi, this is Zach. Welcome to the next episode of Rocket Recovery. So glad that you could join and continue the conversation here. We're going to be talking about Addiction 101 today, Part 2. Last week, we focused on the problem of addiction, and this week we're going to focus on the solution. So hopefully I didn't leave you guys in too much of a bind. Hopefully left you wanting more. Welcome. There is a solution. First off, this is a common solution. This is a solution that many people have followed this path. They have recovered. We, as recovered addicts, can absolutely agree on this thing. We join together in brotherly and harmonious action, approaching this world, taking our message to the men and women who still suffer. We earnestly, honestly, from the depths of our being, hope that this message of hope will inform and comfort those who may be affected or love those who are affected. First off, simple sobriety, or the elimination of your addictive behaviors, is really just a beginning of the recovery process. It's foundational. You're setting the baseline for recovery with sobriety. But the more important demonstration of a life that is truly changed, of true recovery, is found in demonstrating, living out the principles that we have learned throughout the recovery process by following the steps, by what we have learned, and living out and demonstrating what we have learned in how we show up in our homes, our interactions with our friends and acquaintances, how we show up in our occupation, and the other affairs of life. The opportunity that we present to those who are still suffering, many, in fact most, will recover if they follow the steps, if they follow the solution. There's a story in AA. Bill W. was in a meeting. This was around the time that the second edition came out, so in the 50s. Someone in the audience asked Bill if you had a chance to change anything in the book. Because in the second edition of the book, they didn't make any changes. That story and why they didn't make any changes is actually in the foreword to that second edition, and why they didn't make any changes. If you were to make any changes, Bill, said this guy, what change would you make? And he said, I would go to page 58 in the big book. So this is 58 of the 4th edition of the big book, which is the first line of chapter 5, How It Works, where we actually get into the meat and potatoes. Rubber meets the road. This is how you recover. These are the steps that you follow. The book says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And Bill said, I would change the word rarely to never have I seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed this path. Instead of rarely, meaning there's a few exceptions, never have we seen somebody fail who has thoroughly followed the path. So what does thoroughly following the path look like? Well, we'll get into that later on in today's episode. We'll talk about what that path actually is. And why it's even called a path, why we walk this road of happy destiny, as it talks about on page 164 at the end of the main text. What is this road of happy destiny? What is this path that we are on? And we continually follow this path. This is not something that you walk for a little while, you get to the destination, and then you get off of it. This is something that you continually walk in this lifetime. So, what is this solution? The main problem of the addict and the addicted person centers in that person's mind rather than in their body. We can point to alcohol addiction, drug addiction, there being very unique indicators within their bloodstream, within their genetic makeups, certain key factors that can be shown biologically, physiologically, that this predisposes a person to addiction. Definitely there is a physical component. But the main problem of the addict doesn't reside in the physical part of their being. The main problem centers in their mind, the obsession of their addiction. I have to have this rather than I'm having it right now and I can't have it anymore and I need more. The physical response to the addiction. Well, the problem wouldn't exist if they didn't take the first drink, right? If they didn't go and click on that site, I wouldn't have a physical reaction to my addiction if I didn't begin the physical process of reacting to the addiction, right? So the main problem centers in your mind, the obsession. I constantly think about it, I rehearse it over and over and over again. I have to have it. I get itchy. I got to get my fix. That happens in pretty much every addict. I'm hankering after a cheeseburger, got to have a cheeseburger, or I play endless video games, or I keep on pulling the slots throughout the night. Whatever your flavor of ice cream and addiction is, it's in your mind. It's the obsession that you have. If you talk to the person, ask them, why did you binge? Why did you go on that last bender? They'll most likely offer 100 different excuses, explanations, alibis as to why they did what they did. We can come up with 1 million different excuses, right? And sometimes what you say, there actually may be some plausibility behind it. I could certainly see from a certain perspective why your dad not being there for you as a child would affect you in such a way that you would act out in this way. I can certainly see how the fact that your boss yelled at you at work and you go on a binger, or why you just got frustrated with your wife or the kids and they wouldn't go to sleep on time, and it's just like, I have enough issues to deal with at work and I come home and I have even more issues. God, what do I do? And I just go and act out, right? There's definitely plausibility. There's certainly challenges that life has to offer. But if you take a look at their actions and you take a look at the severity of the consequences that they face as a result of those actions, the destruction that they leave in their wake, absolutely none of those excuses or explanations really makes any sense. I was mad at my boss because he yelled at me. Therefore, I got drunk at work and vandalized it. They caught me on CCTV and they fired me. The consequence is I got fired. Is that really worth all of the trouble that you went through just because your boss got mad at you because you didn't turn in a document on time or something like that? In light of the severity of the consequences that you face, none of the explanations that you can make towards why I did what I did really makes sense. I look back over my own life and I take a look at the consequences that I'm facing, staring divorce in the eye, having to file the paperwork, losing the woman that I love and I gave my heart and soul to for 15 years, the child that we have together, all of that stuff. While I was participating in those actions, in those behaviors years ago, I never thought or dreamed of that I would be facing these types of consequences. We have a concept in AA called yet. Well, I haven't gotten divorced yet. I haven't lost my job yet. I haven't been kicked out of the house yet. I haven't gotten arrested yet. All these yets However, if over a long enough time horizon, in my case, 15 years worth of marriage, and an addiction was in my life before that, on a long enough time horizon, you're going to face some pretty severe consequences as a result of your actions. So stop early if you can, right? Stop before the addiction actually manifests itself, right? It's like the philosophy of a man who has a headache, and I hit myself in the head with a hammer just so that I don't feel the headache anymore. It's just like, are you serious? Are you crazy? Addicts in an addicted mindset, yeah, you are kind of crazy. You're going to have this obsession. Someday, somehow, I'm going to beat this. I just need to try hard enough. I just haven't exhausted all of my solutions. But you get down that road far enough, you engage in these behaviors long enough. If you're really, truly honest with yourself, you probably have that sneaking suspicion, that little nagging feeling in the back of your mind that you're probably down for the count. There's really no coming back from this one. If you're at that point, if you're without hope, you're just like, okay, what the heck am I supposed to do? I am done. This thing has beat me. This addiction has beat me. There is a solution. And I'm going to read straight from the big book, page 25 of the 4th edition. There is a solution. Almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and the futility of life as we had been living it. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into the 4th dimension of existence of which we had never even dreamed. If we are just like, I don't like this. I hear of what I have to do as part of this recovery process, this hard thing that I need to do. I don't like it. I'm not going to like the fact that I'm going to have to face these fears, that I'm going to have to dig up the past, that I'm going to have to exhume this corpse and actually deal with this person that made me so angry and I have all this resentment against. I'm going to have to lose my pride. None of us like doing that. None of us like losing our ego. Our ego exists to protect us, to keep us from harm, to keep away the scaries and the bad guys, right? It's protective. And we have to lose that ego. We have to break down those barriers. We have to pull down those walls. I have to actually confess to shortcomings that I haven't measured up, that I'm sinful, that I've missed the mark, that I aimed for the prize and I fell far short. That's not a comfortable thing. But in order for us to actually be successful in our recovery, we actually have to go through that process. And the thing is that if we take a look and we get introduced to a community of people where this problem has actually been solved, not a community of people that are going through the same issue together and no one in that group has actually solved the problem. But when we actually come and meet somebody, we observe somebody where the problem has actually been solved, where they live a life of happiness, joy, freedom, where they exhibit a life, a belief, a presence of, I have been changed, I have been moved into a new level of existence. Old things are gone, they're passed away, they're dead and buried, and this new life that I live now is fresh and clean and new and sparkling and white. It's like I've been washed clean. When you see somebody that lives that way and you can see, wow, there's a difference there, and I see my own life in juxtaposition to that, white, clean, pure with that person, and dirty, ugly, black, stained, ugly. It's like the difference between if you live in a northern state and you have snow, and then you see this white, pristine field, and trees in the field sparkling in the morning dew with snow on branches that hasn't fallen off. It's just nice puffy white snow, unspoilt, no deer or animal tracks or anything on the snow. And it's just pure, pristine, picture perfect. And then you see the snowplow that's like comes by and it carves up the road and there's dirt and debris and ice and nastiness and everything. There's that difference, that juxtaposition. I'm the dirty car covered in dirt and mud and everything, and they're this nice clean car. It's, newly waxed and everything. You see that juxtaposition and you're just like, okay, obviously they have something that I don't have. Do I want it? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. Do I want what they have? Am I willing to do what they did in order to have it? There is nothing left for us. When I'm faced with that, there's nothing left for us except to pick up that kit of spiritual tools. Here on page 25, it says there are two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best as we could. And the other was to accept spiritual help. That's it. That's the core, the crux of the problem right there, then and there. That is the solution. This is part of the leveling of the pride, the self-searching, the confession of shortcomings, is that you're going to have to actually deal with the whole spiritual thing. You're going to actually have to think and talk about and discuss God, spiritual principles, the life, the universe, and everything. If you take a look at somebody in which the addictive problem has been solved, that they are in full recovery at this time, more often than not, they will have had a deep and effective spiritual experience that has revolutionized their entire attitude towards life, towards other people, and towards God. They have made it the central fact of their lives that there's an absolute certainty that their Creator has entered into their hearts and their lives in such a way that is just miraculous. That God has done something for them that they could not do for themselves. They lacked the power. God came in, gave them the power, and they were able to do something with it. Now, when I say something about God, let's briefly talk about that. When we talk about God, when I talk about God, I have a very personal understanding of what that means. That this is my spiritual experience. That's what I say when I say God. When you say God, when you have your conception of God, the God as you understand him to be, it may be, and most likely is, wildly different than my understanding and conception of God. But I think what we can all, if we can get rid of the baggage associated with the term God and come to a common understanding that God is really the God of your understanding, God as you understand him in this moment, which changes from moment to moment, day to day, hour to hour, week to week, year to year. My understanding of God now is completely different than it was when I was 25 years old. My understanding of God is completely different than your understanding of God. But the central fact of most people's that have recovered life is that they have had some profound spiritual experience, interaction, epiphany, mountaintop, some sort of miraculous experience with God that you don't have yet. And you have to come to terms with that. That's actually one of the steps. There's an entire step that's dedicated to overcoming this challenge of, I got to search out a higher power. Seriously? Why can't I do it myself? Well, it's just like, well, isn't trying it on your own what got you in here in the first place? What got you into your problem in the first place? When talking about a solution, let's take a look at what you may have overlooked, bypassed willingly in the past. Let's re-examine spirituality and God. Maybe you missed something last time around. Compare that against your life the way that it's been lived up to this point. The futility, the hopelessness that you have experienced, near killing yourself. Oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? I'm completely screwed. Well, in light of death or insanity, actually opening up your heart a little bit and considering spirituality and that you may have missed something in your past, that's not very high price to pay in light of the fact of losing my life, going insane. We probably should actually talk about this. We should probably open our hearts and accept some spiritual help. And maybe this guy that I see, it's white and clean as snow, who seems to have his shit together, maybe I can learn something from him. And if his experience means that he had to actually come to terms with God and the universe, well, maybe that has to be a part of my journey as well. So these vital spiritual experiences, they appear to be like these emotional displacements, this rearrangement, the ideas and the emotions and the attitudes which once were like this guiding force of the life of who you were up to that point suddenly are cast aside. A completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate you. That's what this spiritual experience looks like. And the thing is that it doesn't have to be this aha, burning bush, lightning bolt out of the blue kind of thing. It doesn't have to be this instantaneous, like, I've been transported into the fourth dimension of existence. Beam me up, Scotty type of transformational shift. It can be a slow burn. It doesn't have to look the same, but the experience needs to happen. It can be a more educational variety. When I was in kindergarten, I only learned things that were for me in kindergarten. Then I graduated to first grade and second grade and third grade and so on, right? When I was in elementary and primary school, I learned things at a different level than I did when I was in secondary or high school. I progressed slowly. It's the educational variety of learning and growth and change and transformation. Sometimes transformation looks like that. Your vital spiritual experience doesn't necessarily have to be that lightning bolt out of the blue. Sometimes it can be that slow burn, transformational, educational growth. This is a new design for living. This is a transformational conversation. This is a new way of living. If you have the desperation of a drowning man, you're going to grab onto anything that's coming your way. So the way that it was put to me is like, hey, if I was on the Titanic and I was drowning in the water and there was a lifeboat that came by and they threw me a life preserver, of course I'm going to grab onto it. I don't want to be in that freezing cold water that I'm going to drown in, right? Let me put it this way. What happens if that life preserver has shards of glass embedded in it because there happened to be an explosion that, shot into the boat? You can see on the sides of the boat, there's glass and everything, and it happened to get in the life preserver and everything because of this explosion. Are you going to grab onto the life preserver? Of course. I'd rather suffer a few cuts and have my life saved than say, nah, I'm not going to have anything to do with that life preserver because it doesn't look the way that I want it to look. It's not to my liking. Even though the life preserver is the only way that you're going to be saved from this frigid water. Nah, I'd rather not because it's covered in shards of glass. The program of recovery and actually living a life of recovery, you're probably not there yet. And it's okay to not be there yet. Continue on in your addiction. Eventually you will be there. Or continue to try other means to overcome this addiction. But somebody that's desperate, that's drowning, it doesn't matter if there's shards of glass in it, if it's been set on fire, if somebody covered it in poo and feces. It doesn't matter. I'm going to grab onto it because I'd rather live and be uncomfortable than die in shame in my addiction. Finally, this is an entirely personal thing. The program of recovery in most circumstances are suggestions. No one's forcing you to walk into the rooms of recovery. No one's forcing you to begin a program of transformational growth. No one's forcing you to act out. There's no gun to your head saying that you have to do this, and there's no gun to your head that says that you have to try to recover from this. This is a personal affair, and a program of recovery is intensely personal. Now, there are general rules to follow. There's general steps to take. There are suggestions that have worked for many, 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 many other people. I mean, the AA program has helped over 1.52 million people recover I mean, it is the number one philosophy that has come out of the 20th century in the 1900s. It is the most impactful social movement that has ever taken place in the history of this country. Maybe aside from, civil rights and everything, but addiction recovery through the AA 12-step program ranks pretty far up there in helping people improve their lives and make a difference in this world. But this is an entirely personal affair. We offer suggestions. There are no musts in this program, except for a few things that are actually laid out very specifically in the book. There are clear-cut directions in how recovery happens. I'll go through those briefly as we close out the program today. First step in recovery. We admitted that we were powerless over our addiction. There's this admission that I have no hope anymore. My life is completely off the rails, completely unmanageable, and I'm powerless. I have to admit that to myself. 2, there is a power that is bigger and greater than me that will actually restore me to my sanity. I've lost hope. I've lost power. It can be restored to me by a power that's bigger than me. Something bigger than my addiction, something bigger than my own self-effort. I have to believe in a power that's greater than me, and I came to believe that it could actually restore me to sanity. 3, I accept help. I made a decision to turn my thoughts and my actions over to the care of God as I understand Him. I will change the way that I think. I will change the way that I act according to the suggestion by my higher power and by sponsors that have actually recovered and are willing to show me the path. Number 4, I made a inventory of all of the issues, all of the crap that has gone on in my life. In order for me to know what's going on, I actually have to know what's going on. In order for me to actually make changes, I have to know what are the things that need to be changed. What are the hurts? What are the hang-ups? Where are the areas that I have hurt other people? What are those issues? And then 5, I admit to God, to myself, and to another person who cares the exact nature of my wrong. So I actually read out that inventory. I admit it. I make a confession. Number 6, I become ready to have God remove these defects of character. I'm ready to get rid of these things in my life. I'm ready to drop this rock that has been pulling me under in life. Number 7, I humbly ask God to remove these shortcomings from me. 8, I made a list of all of the people that I've harmed, and I became willing to have clearing conversations and make amends with every single one of them. Number 9, I actually have those conversations. I make those amends and directly with the people whenever possible, except if I were to do so that I would harm them or other people. I have to be mindful of these conversations that I'm having, but I go and I have those conversations. 10, I will continue throughout my life, day by day, continue to take that personal inventory, and when I was wrong, I admit it. Number 11, I seek through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as I understand Him, and I pray for what's the right thing to do and give me the power to actually do it. Step 12, after I've had this spiritual awakening that will come about as a result of going through these steps, I try to carry this message of recovery, this message of hope to every other person that's still suffering. Every person that I come across, hey man, this is the way that I was. My life was shit. I hated myself. This is what happened. I was introduced to this program of recovery. I was given a set of tools that I applied to my life, and everything is radically different. I've been rocketed into the 4th dimension of existence, and my life is amazing right now. It can happen with you too. Do you want change? Do you want help? These real steps that you can take to overcome your addiction and begin to live a life of happiness, joy, freedom, what you never thought possible, it can be yours. There is a solution. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Rocket Recovery. I'm your host, Zach. Thank you so much for listening. You have a wonderful, wonderful day. You've been listening to the Rocket Recovery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Catch up on our socials. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Thank you again for supporting us. Please make sure that you subscribe, like, and share with all of your friends, all those that you know that need to hear this message of hope, recovery, joyfulness, freedom, abundance, clarity, all of the above. Thank you so much.